All right, I think this is a great time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. Today is the first time we've ever offered one of our public lectures in the middle of the day, so we appreciate you taking time during your day to join us. And you can also let us know at a survey that's coming around at the end of the lecture, whether this time or another time works better for you in general for these types of presentations. But thank you again for joining us, and thank you especially to Dr. Barbara Burns for joining us today. I'm really excited to have my esteemed colleague here sharing her work with us. I'm Liliana Langua. I'm a professor in psychology here at the University of Washington and the director of the Center for Child and Family Wellbeing. This lecture is part of our center's efforts to share evidence-based practices that support the well-being of children, primarily through supporting the social emotional skills and well-being of the adults in their lives. We offer a number of learning and growing opportunities, including mindfulness classes, professional and parent workshops, and public lectures like today's. These are all made possible through the very generous support of the Meritz Family Foundation. We're very grateful for their support. I'm going to start with just a couple logistic issues. Please use the chat function to let us know if you're having technical difficulties. Our Eliza and Marcelina are monitoring that for any technical questions. Please use the Q&A box for questions that you want directed to Dr. Burns. If we have time at the end, we'll have some time for her to answer some of those questions. If not, I'll send her those questions and she'll be able to follow up in an email with general responses to those questions. And then our lecture is being recorded and it will be posted on the CCFW website as soon as possible, usually within 3 days. So if you want to share the lecture or the link with others who might be interested, that would be wonderful. As I mentioned, soon after the lecture, you're going to get a survey, and we really urge you to fill that out. It helps us to make sure we're meeting the community's needs for what they want to learn and hear, and allows us to offer high quality programming. I invite you to go to our website and check out some of the classes we're offering and join our mailing list to stay informed about upcoming learning opportunities. So with that, it is my honor to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Barbara Burns. She's a developmental psychologist and professor of child studies at Santa Clara University. She obtained her PhD from Brown University, and for more than 35 years, she's been studying the roots of resilience in children experiencing adversity and trauma. She's published extensively on understanding attention and executive function in children's developing self-regulation across childhood, and exploring their significance for child well-being and early school readiness. So more recently, her work has focused on developing and evaluating mindfulness-based parenting program, safe, secured, and loved. And that's what she's sharing with us today. And this program promotes parent and child well-being and resilience. And she'll be sharing some of that research with us. Barbara, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Reach out. I'll be there. The 4 tops. You know it. My talk is about promoting child well-being and preventing child abuse. And I want you to keep that 4 top song in your head, the entire talk. There are 4 parts. I'm going to talk about briefly the science of adversity and resilience. And then I'm going to talk about my journey from a research intervention to a community program. And then I'll talk quickly about the expansion and future for this community program and end with a vision for you to think about community, healing community, and how are we going to mobilize resilience with community-led programs. So I'm going to say a couple other things about me. Yes, I am a developmental psychology researcher. And for the first 25 years, I was really looking at school readiness and the factors that really lead to negative outcomes. And I studied everything from lead poisoning to attention skills. And my main partners were Head Start, early Head Start, and pediatric clinics. And this is a picture of some of my graduate students and undergrads at University of Louisville. In 2005, I took a leave and went to New York City to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and worked on a program called Families as Partners. And this was my direct supervisor, Tom Frieden. And yes, that is Dr. Fauci next to him. He wasn't a hero then. And Tom Frieden actually went on to become the director of the CDC. Now, this program called Families as Partners, the reason I was brought in is they wanted to have parents more engaged with early intervention. This was a very big public health program, $400 million a year, I believe, at least back then, was the budget. Third thing that's relevant is my work in Botswana in service learning in orphanages and schools. Between about 2008 and 2012, I did work as part of an international service learning project at University of Louisville in orphanages in Gaborone, Botswana. And this is me with Mr. P at an orphanage that we went to twice a year with students. And then this is me giving a group, and the focus of the group coincidentally was strengthening, nurturing, caregiving with mindful breathing, self-compassion practices, and crafts. We're going to come back to that craft issue. So those are the things that led me to where we are today. So now let's highlight a couple of things about the science of adversity and resilience. So when you think about the science of adversity and resilience, safe, secure, and loving relationships are really the antithesis of child abuse and neglect. We understand that. And the research evidence demonstrates that the services needed to support vulnerable children, they exist, but there's a gap between research and practice. I'm going to share very quickly a children's book that's part of our program called I Feel Safe, Secure, and Loved. And I'm going to read it in English. I feel safe, secure, and loved when you smile at me. I feel safe, secure, and loved when we play together. You get the idea. When you pay close attention to me, when we laugh together, when we're eating together, when I'm exploring together with you, when I look at your face, when you watch me play outside, when you calm my upsets, when I'm falling asleep. It's clear that's what we want to get across to everyone in terms of what do children need to feel safe, secure, and loved. So the science of adversity and resilience is also very clear, showing that adversity and trauma impact child development, impact physical health, cognitive capacities, academic achievement, and social emotional functioning. In 1988, it wasn't that long ago, Bonnie McLeod published a paper in the American Psychologist called Socioeconomic Disadvantage and Child Development. And she very persuasively described how persistent poverty has detrimental effects. And she argued that this link between disadvantage and children's socioeconomic functioning was mediated partially by harsh, inconsistent parenting and elevated exposure to acute and chronic stressors. Sounds like just what we're talking about. And in 1998, she laid out some clairvoyant ideas about how we're going to move from research findings to practice and policy. About that same time, Ann Maston published a paper that showed variability in the impact of risk. So we see in the yellow box risk factors like low education, single parenthood, parent divorce, parent died, foster care, maltreatment, or witness violence. Those are risk factors. And if you take a sample of children and identify how many risk factors do they have, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you plot that against problems, you see this risk gradient. So with increasing with increasing risks, we see increasing problems. Not surprising, perhaps, but those little people on the graph, I want you to look at, and they're showing how individuals can be on, like near the average where the line is, or off gradient. In other words, some, like the little person under risk level 1 up high, they're off gradient. They have more problems than predicted for their risk level. Whereas if we go over to risk level 5 and 6, we see those little people down low who are doing much better than predicted. This is the kind of evidence for resilience. And Ann Maston talked about how resilience doesn't come from rare and special qualities, but everyday magic of ordinary normative human resources in the minds, brains, and bodies of children, in their families and relationships, and in their communities. So she started arguing for us to understand resilience as a system operating across contexts. So a child's response to a challenge depends on the adaptive capacities at each of those levels from the context in their life. And this resilience, this system, is dynamic and complicated. So what are the sources for resilience? We can start with the middle area, the family, and we've already talked about how we think sensitive caregiving, warm, close relationships, parental mental health are all sources for resilience or ability to deal with challenge. And not surprisingly, down at the individual level, the child's immune system, their neurobiology, the problem solving or cognitive capacities, and economic resources are all sources for resilience. But it's also the case up at the community and society level. Community systems, cultural systems, educational systems are also part of those sources for resilience. So this science of resilience transformed approaches to understanding adversity. No longer were we looking at just what leads to negative outcomes, AKA my first 25 years of work, but what leads to positive outcomes. Strength-based approaches, protective factors, how do you build capacity at these levels? So the roots of resilience in early childhood is described in the Encyclopedia of Early Childhood Development, a little plug there, in these ways. And if we look where the red star is, we see the roots depend heavily on caregiving quality and family function. But it's also the case we've got other factors that reflect individual, family, and community levels. Now, you have your own Dr. Liliana Lengua, who has done some brilliant work, truly brilliant work, on understanding some of these aspects and the nuances of the basic research of the relationship between caregiving quality and outcomes. I'm sure she's going to give the next talk, and I'm going to sign up. Okay, so a child's response to adversity, think of it like piloting a plane in a storm. The child is the pilot, and adversity is how severe the weather is. Well, at the individual level, maybe the type of plane is part of the resources for resilience. The family is the co-pilot, But at the community and society level, the equipment, the support available to the pilot and co-pilot, the ground crew, air traffic controllers, communication. So success, are they going to get through this storm, depends on individual, family, and community society capacities. Okay, now the journey. My journey from a research intervention to a community program started at University of Louisville, and now I'm at Santa Clara University. Now, the research intervention was based on the science of resilience and the science of adversity. And there were three main foci that, based on the science, that any research intervention that was going to tackle this needed to include. One, support the caregiver's ability to manage stress and strong emotions, so more reflective, mindful parenting. Two, strengthen caregiver-child attachment. And three, support the child's thinking skills, attention, self-regulation, cognition, and problem solving. So now you got to look at the bottom where those roots are. That's me. This is a very big tree. We're trying to support the roots of resilience by looking at those three foci. The name of our program is Safe, Secure, and Loved, and it's 6 1.5 to 2 hour workshops. And each workshop is characterized by a symbol: the anchor, the glass, the suitcase, the heart, the school bus, and the butterfly. And these workshops are focused on strengthening, nurturing strategies and reflective capacities, and we call them habits of resilience. And the habits of resilience are supported by a curriculum, a habits journal that the parents work on, yoga mats, crafts, toys, books, and habit pins. So we're trying to strengthen the roots of resilience with habits of resilience and mindfulness practices. Okay, so this is an infographic that shows the overview of Safe, Secure, and Love, and we're going to quickly dissect it by stripe on the infographic. So the first part is chronic stress. So this program recognizes the effects of adversity and trauma, that family violence, childhood adversities cause chronic stress, and that's affecting the family and the child. So this would be a trauma-informed. The second stripe of the infographic focuses on the science of resilience, not what I have done, but what many, many other people have been focusing on for really 40 or 50 years. And that is the three main principles for family resilience are stress management, responsive relationships, attachment, and life skills. I'm talking about them in terms of executive function skills and cognitive skills. So we took the science of resilience and applied it to parent education. So you see, I've got the circle around those three things: stress management, attachment, executive function skills. And around the circle, we've got the symbols for the workshop, and the middle one is the butterfly. And those are the family habits of resilience. Okay, no problem so far. But next, we put the curriculum based on the science of resilience. We wanted to put that curriculum into a community-led program. So it was community-led parent education. So there are challenges when you try to implement a community-led program for child well-being to prevent child abuse. There are issues having to do with the trust of the partners, the commitment, everyone's role, the resources, the scientific rigor. Perhaps you've seen this cartoon. implementing a program in a community setting. Good work, but I think we need a little more detail here, like then a miracle occurs. Even the ants who do a lot of community work, when they're studying community-wide strategies, they recognize that there's a piece in the puzzle here where you have to say, then a miracle occurs. So my argument today is that a community-led program, that's the miracle, and then a miracle occurs. So a community-led program can address the gap between prevention, research, and practice. Can I tell you about the science of resilience? No. Science communication does not have a good reputation for good reason. The scientists are talking the apples. They want you to hear apples. The public is listening for oranges and talking oranges. But if you combine community leaders and scientists, and there's the support, and you can support trust, commitment, shared roles, etc., we've got oranges to oranges. So a community-led model can address challenges, all sorts of challenges to participation. Leaders are trusted, it's culturally relevant, it's trauma-informed, contextualized to that community, and the community has much more input on even the sites and the schedule, much more accessibility for families. The community-led model can also, and this is important, mobilize community society sources of resilience so that community cohesion and identity and rituals and values and community resources can be pulled from, and it is more scalable and cost effective if a community is part of the process. So we started in 2012. I came to Santa Clara University and brought with me Safe, Secure, and Loved. And we started by doing workshops led by bilingual researchers because we were doing it all in Spanish. 2013, the workshops were led by researchers and community volunteers. 2014, the workshops were led by community volunteers with support from researchers. Then the community volunteers led workshops at new sites with supports from researchers. And what had happened, if you start with the arrow that says start, people would join the group, they'd participate, they'd learn and practice habits of resilience. This would strengthen inner wisdom and calm. They'd learn child development. They'd learn about trauma-informed care and volunteer as a community leader. The volunteer community workforce continued to increase in size. I love every one of these people. And let me give you a couple quotes. Through this program, I can help many families. This is the woman holding the butterfly poster who's saying this. I'm happy that it created a huge change, first in me and also in my family. Now I'm a better human being and a better mother. I'm so proud to be a spokesperson for this beautiful program. Let's hear from her directly.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Mora, and I'm promoter from Sacred Heart Community Service. One of the biggest impacts that Safe, Secure, and Love has made on my life, my family, and my community is to be connected with them. I learned to live in the present moment with mindfulness, and I have again going in, listening compassionately, without judgment, and I don't try to fix every problem. Instead, help them or giving them the skills and tools to use for the rest of their lives. Listening to my community make me a better assistant and supporting them to have a great, successful life. Today, I'm grateful to be on the Safe, Secure, and Love, helping my community, my family, my kids. Life has shown me I learned from mistakes, and I know today that current lives like this make a difference. We can have prevention, have the future full of love and hope. Sí se puede. Thank you for making this possible.
In 2018, we developed the Safe, Secure, and Love Leadership Academy to support more community autonomy of the program. So again, now we're kind of in deployment focus. We've got to scale up. We want to make it sure it's accessible, it's packaged. There's an ability for the community to monitor and ensure consistency and expansion in marketing. We have a very comprehensive system for implementation of the program. We have graduates from this is graduates from the Leadership Academy in Gilroy, California, in San Jose, California. And the research intervention in community setting has really moved to a community program. I love this Escher print. And let me show you evidence as to why I believe this had changed. This is, I'm going to show you a scan of the room at a Board of Supervisors meeting about a year ago. And the topic for this Board of Supervisors meeting was funding for child abuse prevention. It was like a sit-in. 75 people attended. They brought a petition with 650 names on it, saying as a community, they wanted more support for child abuse prevention. This does not happen with a research project, maybe Lily's. Okay. Now I want you to pay attention first to, this is a picture of the room. And you can see it's like the Supreme Court. The Board of Supervisors are way, way in the back, and they're actually up high. And we as the people are in, way far back. And you have to put your name on a list in order to get in line to talk to the Board of Supervisors. This little boy, who's the son of one of the promotoras, said to his mother, I want to get up and contribute. I want to say something. And she had no idea what he was going to say. He filled the form out, got in line, and got up to talk about child abuse prevention work. He didn't phrase it exactly that way. He said that he loved his mother very much, and sort of emotional. He loved his mother very much, and he could see how she helps many people, and that he was happy to support the group today, and talked about how proud he was of his community. We'll come back to him. And this is a collage of that night. That was kind of a pinnacle moment. And I wrote about it in the American Journal of Community Psychology. I can give that reference in the chat. Now, this project was funded. We've been doing studies all along, but we were funded for a 2-year pilot with the child welfare counties, Santa Clara County social service agencies from 2018 to 2020. Our focus was on families with children 0 to 3 from zip codes with the highest rate of general neglect. And the 2 purple stars show zip codes in San Jose and in Gilroy, where they have the highest participation in child welfare. So I'm going to share with you the research evaluation from the first part of that pilot. It was with 74 families, 74 out of 93 completed 5 or 6 workshops, and they were 100% Latina moms with children between 0 and 3. We used a survey, and I'll show you an example of some of the questions, called the Protective Factors Survey. It has 20 items in 5 domains. You take it before and after. And the analysis of this is whether or not your scores before and after are significantly different, but more important is looking at the effect size, which really can show, is the difference meaningful? It allows you to compare the findings with other studies. And then I'll just give you a sense of the overall evaluation and the fidelity evaluation. Fidelity has to do with how consistent the program was workshop to workshop. So the protective factor survey has 5 domains: family functioning and resiliency, nurturing and attachment, child development and knowledge about parenting, social support, and concrete support. And we were really focused on the first 3. Here are a couple of the questions from the protective factor survey. Your instructions are to circle the number that describes how true these statements are for you and one of your children between 0 and 3. You pick one for both before and after. So you would have to rate from strongly disagree to strongly agree. There are many times when I don't know what to do as a parent. Agree to disagree. Or my family pulls together when things are stressful. Strongly disagree to strongly agree. So there are 20 questions like that. And the first domain of family functioning and resilience, each question showed significant differences before and after the workshop, and the effect size was 0.59. So that's a medium going towards a large effect size. So that's good. That means this is a meaningful difference. Something happened with family functioning and resilience. And with nurturing and attachment questions about spending time doing what the child likes or soothing the child, it was also the case that these were significant differences and meaningful differences. And in child development and knowledge of parenting, again, changes occurred before and after, and the effect size was a little smaller. And there were the changes in social support and concrete support were trending in that direction. So we think that that isn't what we were trying to do, give them concrete support, where to find a job, where to get food or housing. But in talking with other people in the group, we think that had an effect. In terms of overall evaluation, people responded very much that they were very much satisfied. They would recommend it very much, and it was very helpful. Let me give you a couple quotes just to give you a sense of how people were talking about it. At first, I felt like this class was just a class. I guess a waste of time, maybe to embarrassment, fear, or denial. However, you understand, you begin to grow and heal. Your family begins to grow with you. Our daily habits begin to change. What I've learned is life is not a straight line. When I began to develop a habit of mindfulness, our family spectrum began to change. In Safe, Secure, and Loved, we begin to gain knowledge for ourselves. The fidelity evaluation, this is something that the county was very excited for us to share with them. Our fidelity evaluation was very high. We have a system where in each workshop, there's a person who keeps track of the major key components and whether they're covered. And this shows in the turquoise bars, about 75 to 85% of each of the workshops, the anchor, glass, suitcase, heart, school bus, butterfly workshops were covered, fully covered. And we've started looking at the relationship between participating in the program and child welfare involvement. Again, this is going to be a long-term study. This just shows that 12 months prior to the start of Safe, Secure, and Loved, those 74 folks that were in our study, about 6% had had contact with DFCS. And 6 months following Safe, Secure, and Loved, so far, there's been no DFCS contact. That certainly may change, but I just wanted to give you a sense of where we're going with that. Okay, that's the journey. Now, expansion and future. So we are expanding Safe, Secure, and Loved at this community site. Sacred Heart Community Service is a community-based organization, and they have been funded for 300 families to do Safe, Secure, and Loved, 300 more families for the next 3 years, 2021 to 24. We're expanding in residential communities and family resource centers, in addition to the 150 families that we're already doing. And next year, we're attempting a randomized controlled trial to support submission of this program to the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse for Child Welfare. So we're continuing the community research partnership. But the train is being driven by the community. The funding is going to the community. Now, beginning in 2014, we started to provide training to groups that were interested in this model. So people would contact me after I'd give a talk or be on a panel, and they'd want to hear more about it. Departments of Public Health, child welfare programs, community-based organizations. And so far, we've trained people, in addition to San Jose and Gilroy, San Francisco and Hayward and Fullerton, California, Louisville, Kentucky, Lafayette, Louisiana, and South Bend, Indiana. This was one of the training weekends that was actually done in San Jose, and there were people from several places, from San Francisco and Lafayette, Louisiana, who came to San Jose. We've also expanded the sharing of Safe, Secure, and Love community-led model. We now have a hybrid webinar online training that's built on that Leadership Academy. So we have leadership workbooks, 18 videos, activities, discussion guides. And San Jose, a new group, has started the new kind of hybrid version in October. And last week, a new group from New Orleans, Louisiana, started the online training. And in January, Ashland City, Tennessee, a group from Public Health is starting. We're also expanding community strategies. So in addition to direct outreach and publications, we're doing a social media campaign. This shows you how far off the grid I am going. We have a telenovela. We have it as a podcast. We're getting ready to launch it on our YouTube channel, and we're looking for funding for a video for it. So again, we're looking in a different way at communicating these principles about supporting resilience in children. Now, what's the vision of community healing community? How are we going to mobilize resilience with community-led programs? So the vision here is going back to when I was in Botswana and doing these groups. Mr. P, this really influenced me. Mr. P called his staff together, and I was expecting it was going to be the teachers from the orphanage and the child care providers who were taking care of the babies. But and again, I think I gave at least 8 workshops there across the time, twice a year. Not only did the teachers and the child care providers come, the cooks came, the kitchen workers came, the yard people came. When he wanted everyone to learn about how to support the kids in the orphanage. And again, if we have a vision that community is going to heal community, it changes our priorities in terms of how do we support community-led programming. If we change our thinking about it, we're going to transform our approaches to child welfare. Imagine mobilizing more resilience from community. Back to Botswana. one of the activities, the crafts we did, was a little bracelet, and people had to talk about their strengths as a caregiver or a supporter of children. And they had to put a bead on their bracelet for each strength. The very last time I was in Botswana in 2012, although I hope to go back, in 2012, one of the cooks took me back to the kitchen. And the kitchen is like this cement room with no roof that had 3 faucets. And above each of the faucets was pinned this bracelet from the first year I came there. And he said to me, we still talk about our strengths. We talk about our strengths when we do the dishes. Crafts. So imagine mobilizing more resilience from your community. Can you even imagine your community is one where all the young children are effectively buffered from the impact of toxic stress, adversity, and trauma by resilience from not just individuals and family contexts, but the community and society? This is actually a picture of one of my old graduate students who somehow has aged, and he's now a professor of public health, and he's still going back to Botswana. I don't know how that happened. Okay, the community-led model here, I'm really trying to emphasize that we're trying to mobilize more resilience, more capacity to deal with challenges across all the contexts. And my argument here is that the community context has been kind of ignored or not supported in terms of how that actually influences the family and the individual. Back to my little guy who got up in front of the Board of Supervisors, after that talk, I went up to him and I said, "That was just so incredible that you supported us in this way." And he said, "I'm part of the community." And at that moment, it was like Ann Masson's model of how community affects individual and family. So the vision for community healing, community-led programs. They can address the gap between child welfare research and practice. It actually requires a lot. It requires a very close partnership, deep trust across stakeholders, and there are a lot of challenges, and we've dealt with many of them. But this is the direction I believe we need to go. The vision for community healing community and the contribution of safe, secure, and loved is both bold and modest. Bold because I think community-led programs, I think that's the miracle. Now, the modest is we have so much more to go because we have to overcome a lot of the individual, organizational, and systemic factors that are impeding the research to practice, that are impeding that translation from research to practice in child welfare. So I'm saying now, instead of I'll be there, maybe it's we'll be there. Go home and look at it on YouTube. I want to acknowledge and appreciate a lot of people, my collaborators at Sacred Heart Community Service, my undergraduate students who have been working with me, my research partners, my social service agency partners, the funding that I've had from Santa Clara, and I dedicate this work to Ed, my spouse of 40 years, and my daughters, Em and Tara. You've taught me everything I know about feeling safe, secure, and loved. Thank you. Over to you, Lily.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
I didn't expect that.
I had to pause because I'm catching myself too. Tears are in my eyes and I'm catching my voice here. Thank you so much for that really inspiring work that you're doing and for sharing that with us. We have a few questions that I'd love to share with you. Ellen is asking, can you give a taste of the typical work day or in the life of one of the parent or community leaders? I'm guessing more broadly, who are they and how are they working this into their lives?
Great question. So the community leaders initially were our parents who were in the workshop. So they were recruited because they had a baby 0 to 3. They went through the 6 weeks, usually it's 1 a week, and then decided they wanted to participate. So they initially start where they're shadowing and they're working with a second, we call them promotora, because this is the Latinx community, promotora, in order to learn how to, kind of get used to leading a group. So that goes on for a little while. But when they are ready and they've gone through all the training, they have their 1 hour meeting pre-workshop with their team. So the workshops are done by a pair of promotoras. So those two meet with a site supervisor from the agency for 1 hour, either the day before or the morning before the workshop. And we have a set system of what happens in that meeting to refresh the main points. And then they do the workshop, and that's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours a week. And now the first 3 or 4 years, we had no stipends. It was completely volunteer. Now we have a small stipend if you participate. So we have quite a few, maybe about 30 to 35 promotoras now in this one community-based organization. And so they are doing, like, in a given year, they might do 1 set of workshops in the fall and another set in the spring.
Thanks.
They love it. They love it. And we also have parties.
Yeah. What a great model. Another question is there a way to adapt this for families with older children? Or have you been thinking about how to make it apply or work with families with, you say, grade school age or middle school age children?
That's a great question. I would love someone to do that. We did start this program. We have the same program for 3 to 5-year-olds, and that is where I started. And so then after the first, well, we actually are doing both now in San Jose, but the baby one people are more interested in. It would not be difficult to do. We had a prototype for a middle school group. The issue is just working through, again, I'm not a middle school and adolescent psychologist, and so there are particular kinds of things that you'd be wanting to focus on more directly with them. But I would be happy to work with someone on that.
Sounds like a collaboration in the making. There's a couple questions, 3 actually, around COVID-19. So, one question is really what's happening differently because of coronavirus, and ideas about working more fully in a community context within the context of COVID.
Yes, beautiful. Well, this was this is again a little silver lining of COVID. When COVID started, I thought we were sunk. I did not understand how we were going to continue our groups, and but I wasn't keeping in mind that all of the promotoras, most all of them, had elementary school age kids, and they were learning Zoom in order to have their kids go to school. So this is last April. And the promotoras, this is why I know it's community-led model. The promotoras got together. I developed a set of slides in English and in Spanish where they could help them go through the workshops, and they successfully really transferred this whole system into online Safe, Secure, and Loved. Now, there are a few things that are interesting about that. First of all, the rate of completion was about the same. About 81% of people who start finish, and they finish 5 or 6 classes, mostly 6. People want to participate in this in a way that is different than other things I've done in the past. The other thing that's interesting is we've had many more dads want to sit in on these groups. So again, because it's Zoom, they usually sit in like a little bit out of the picture, but we've had more dads participate. And in Louisiana, they are very interested in actually starting with Zoom, the Zoom version, with teenage moms, because they feel like that would be more, that would just work better for them. And so, again, I think this is like the demonstration that community resilience is out there. And these folks, they were leading this transformation. I was just, crying, drinking tea, and they were figuring it out. But I've gotten on board.
That's really exciting. I know coronavirus has forced us all to learn things we didn't think we'd want to learn or that would be effective, but we're learning things that will probably carry forward going on afterwards even. And then there's a research question around coronavirus. How much of your research data that you showed took place during coronavirus, and are you accounting for lower reporting of child abuse cases during the shutdown?
Oh, that's a really good question. All those data are from pre-COVID, and it's about 75 subjects, and there are 75, or no, there are 82 more that same year from March to June. And so we'll be able to look at the differences in those two groups. So that's yet to be determined, but that's a very important set of questions. And it's a very frightening time in child welfare because of everyone being shut away. That is certainly true. But these moms that are in the community are continuing their networking in a way that is really that really supports this mission I'm on, to get people to start thinking more about community-led, whatever they're doing, or if they're a policymaker, if they're a practitioner or a researcher, all 3 groups could be thinking more about community resilience and the benefit of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. We have a few thank yous in the chat, as well as a question about when we're going to have this in Seattle. So that's great. I have one last question, and I think we have time for it. Has the program been applied in an international community? And if so, have hygiene, cleanliness, or nutrition elements ever been included?
Oh, I would love to do that. First of all, I'd love to well, the pilot of the pilot I was doing for 4 years in Botswana, and we have done workshops in Greece, this was about in 2013 or 2014, but that was when the government collapsed right in the middle of that project. It was right around 4th of July. Anyway, so no, the answer is no, but I would love to do that. The wonderful thing about, there's one more commercial here. The wonderful thing about community-led programming is that, again, this is kind of the bare bones. It's a manualized program. So you're following a manual of activities and discussion points, But the reason it works so well, I'm convinced, and it works in different places, because in Louisville, we were working in homeless shelters with about 100% African American families. And in San Jose, it's Latinx families in both in all sorts of places. And the same kind of dynamics emerged in the sense of people apply their own, they contextualize the issues to their community. And that's why I think it's the secret miracle sauce. So I'd love to do international work, especially if you could get me back to Botswana.
Well, thank you, Barbara. This has been really enlightening and inspiring. And I think that you're really on to, like you said, the miracle ingredient of having these be community engaged and community led. Because if we all know that systems model you presented, that that we're all supported by the circles around us, and the arms and the love and the security that comes with that. So thank you for sharing your research.
And I want to add, I want to give you a little bonus at the end, 3 resources, and I can put this in your chat. 3 things I'd recommend: a book. I'm sure, Lily, you know all these. A book for parents and professionals, Raising a Secure Child. This is from 2017. 5 stars by my rating. A workbook it's something that's online from the National Center on Family Homelessness. And it's a workbook for those who work with others. So it's a really beautiful self-care book. 5 stars. And this, I just learned about this, The Hugging Tree, a children's book about resilience, came out in 2015. And in addition to the book, it comes with, I have it here, it comes with a teacher's, like online, there's a teacher's classroom guide that's really for older children. It's really exceptional. So I want to recommend those 3 things. And I want to thank Liliana Lengua, who I have admired my whole career. Actually, she's much younger than I am, but my whole career that she was doing work. And I thank Marcelina and Eliza for helping me and making me feel so welcome to give this talk. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your generosity with us, Barbara. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us in the future. Please remember to fill out the survey. That should be in your email box really soon. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.